I once had everything a man could ask for: a thriving business, a loving wife, two beautiful kids, and the pride of knowing my younger brother was out there serving his country. Life, back then, had a kind of simplicity you don't fully appreciate until it's long gone. My name is Warren H. Miles, and for over 3 decades, I was the founder and CEO of Warren Build Co., one of the most respected construction firms in Central Texas. We built schools, churches, homes, and the kind of legacy a man could hand down with pride. I took pride in honest work, fair contracts, and paying every man on time, no matter the economy. My boots were always muddy, my hands calloused, but that was the kind of life I respected. I didn't own 10 suits or wear fancy watches, but I had the respect of my crew and the admiration of my community. That was enough, or so I thought. My brother, Michael, was 8 years younger than me. I practically raised him. Our father died when Michael was just a toddler, and Mom worked 2 shifts to keep food on the table. It was me who walked him to school, taught him how to throw a spiral, and kept the bullies off his back. He called me Big W, and I called him Little M. He was the good one, the soft-spoken, thoughtful one. I was the hard-edged builder, and he was the dreamer who enlisted in the Army when he turned 18. Always said he wanted to do something bigger than himself. Eventually, he married a sweet British woman named Amelia while stationed overseas, and not long after, she gave birth to a son, Aiden. I remember the photo Michael sent me. Him in uniform, holding Aiden like the most precious thing on earth, his face glowing with a pride I'd never seen before. That boy became his whole world. I remember the day it all changed. I was walking the site of a new development just outside of Austin, a 10-home cul-de-sac with sweeping porches and hand-laid stone. It was early morning, the air still thick with dew and the hum of backhoes, when my phone rang. I'll never forget the voice on the other end. It wasn't Amelia. It wasn't even the military chaplain. It was a recorded message, cold and sterile, instructing me to call a number for further information about my brother's unit. I knew what it meant. Before I even dialed, my knees gave out right there, in the middle of the gravel drive, as if someone had torn the foundation out from beneath me. Michael was gone, killed in action, some operation overseas that wasn't even supposed to be dangerous. Routine patrol, they called it. He died a hero, they said, shielding his unit from an ambush. All I could hear was static, and then nothing. That morning, the sun seemed too bright, too offensive. The concrete felt like it would crack open under my boots. I stood there for what felt like hours, dust in my lungs, the world too still. And just like that, the future I'd envisioned, with Michael returning home, raising Aiden nearby, our kids growing up like cousins, was gone. Amelia returned to England with Aiden not long after. She was young, heartbroken, and wanted to be near her family. I didn't blame her, but I made a promise to myself, to Michael, and maybe even to God, that I'd look after them. I paid for Aiden's school, sent gifts on every birthday, even set up a trust fund for him when he turned 18. I remember handwriting those birthday cards every single year, carefully choosing the stamps, even when I was too tired to think straight. He was a quiet kid, smart, kind, looked just like Michael with his dark hair and stormy eyes. Amelia wrote occasionally, polite updates, photos of Aiden in school uniforms or riding his bike. I kept every one of them in a folder labeled family, tucked behind contracts and tax returns on my desk. Meanwhile, back home, I pour my grief into work. That's what men like me do. We build, brick by brick. I expanded the business, took on more contracts, hired more veterans. I wanted to honor Michael, and this was the only way I knew how. My wife, Laura, was my rock through it all, always steady, always patient. She never complained when I came home late, covered in sawdust, my shirt soaked through with sweat. Our children, Emma and Jake, were still young then. Innocent. At least I thought so. I still remember Emma dancing barefoot on the wooden floors of our old ranch house. While Jake tried to mimic her moves, Laura would laugh and clap along. It was simple, perfect. We spent Sundays at the lake, barbecuing under the cottonwoods. Emma would fish with me, and Jake would sneak extra marshmallows into the fire. Back then, I thought I was building a life that would last forever. The years rolled by like wet cement, slow to set, impossible to undo. Aiden grew up across the ocean, sending the occasional thank you card or photo. Emma and Jake grew into teenagers, then young adults. They had every opportunity in the world: private schools, internships, brand new cars for their 16th birthdays. I thought I was giving them what I never had. But somewhere along the way, they started to see the business not as a legacy, but as a bank account, a cash cow. And me? Just the old man funding their lives. Still, I believed in them. I let them intern at the company, shadow project managers, attend board meetings. Jake had a head for numbers. Emma, a sharp tongue that made her a natural in marketing. But neither of them wanted to earn anything. They wanted it handed to them. When I confronted them, they brushed me off. "Dad, you don't get it," Emma once said. "Everything's digital now. You're still stuck in cement and contracts." I should have known then. I didn't see it coming. Not at first. Maybe I didn't want to. But it started subtly. Jake forging my signature on checks. Emma launching a boutique cosmetics brand using company funds. And me, so busy, so damn tired, thinking they were just experimenting, exploring, being young. Then came the lies, the hidden accounts, the embezzlement. I found out through a project manager who flagged a six-figure expense that didn't match any work order. While I questioned Emma, she rolled her eyes and said, "It's all part of brand diversification, Dad. You wouldn't understand." But that's not where part one ends. No, part one ends with the beginning of my fall. Laura passed unexpectedly, an aneurysm in her sleep, gone in a blink. I remember finding her that morning, sunlight creeping through the blinds, the coffee already brewed. I shook her shoulder and got no response. That was the last time my house ever felt like a home. Her perfume still lingered on her robe, and I sat on our bed holding it like a lifeline. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there hollow numb. The woman who'd stood by me through every storm, every sleepless night, every painful decision was gone. After that, I didn't have the strength to keep fighting. I handed over more and more control to Emma and Jake. "They're your legacy," people told me. "Let them lead." So I did. And they led us straight into ruin. 33 years. That's how long it took to watch a life's work crumble in slow motion. You'd think losing my brother was the worst pain I'd ever feel. And it was for a time. But there's a different kind of pain, one you don't see coming. The pain of being betrayed by your own blood. My name once meant something in Texas. The name Warren Miles stood for resilience, honor, and family. But by the time I was pushed into that sterile care facility, it meant nothing. Not even to the kids I once held in my arms. They didn't just take the company. They took my name off the papers. One of the last things I remember before it all slipped away was the legal team coming into my house with documents. "Just some restructuring, Dad," Jake had said, brushing a signature page in front of me while Emma kept me distracted with some tearful speech about stress and growth. I trusted them. I really did. In my old age, I wanted to believe they were doing what was best. But they were just lining their pockets with everything I built, liquidating properties, mismanaging payroll, and turning a respected firm into a laughingstock. By the time I realized how bad it was, I was no longer CEO. I wasn't even on the board. I was an obstacle, someone to be managed. They sold the house not long after. Claimed it was too much for me. The next thing I knew, I was in a care home outside San Antonio. The kind of place that smells like bleach and boiled potatoes. No one there knew my name. No one cared. And worst of all, no one visited. The staff called me Mr. M when they remember me at all. My room had one small window facing a parking lot and a broken recliner that creaked when I shifted. I used to be the man who oversaw the construction of skyscrapers. Now, I sat in a place built like a prison for the forgotten. My meals came in gray trays, and the nurses, God bless them, were always overworked. Some were kind, some weren't. My days blurred into a loop of bad TV, medications, and staring at a wall I couldn't escape. And my children? They didn't come. Not once. Then, one morning, everything changed. There was a knock on the door. Not a nurse, not a doctor. A man stepped in, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that didn't belong in a place like that. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. Then he spoke. "Uncle Warren?" His voice was deep, calm, unmistakable. "It's Aiden." For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Michael's eyes, Michael's posture, but hardened, refined. His voice carried weight, like someone who had led men into dangerous places and brought them back alive. I could barely speak. My throat tightened. Aiden, he nodded. I'm here to take you home. Turns out, Aiden hadn't just grown up well. He'd built an empire of his own, a cybersecurity firm based in London, with offices in Dubai, Berlin, and yes, Dallas. He was decorated too. Former SAS, medals, service records, and a reputation for tracking the untraceable. But none of that mattered in that moment. What mattered was how he looked at me. Not with pity, not with charity, but with respect. With blood. He rented me a home. A real one. With a porch, a garden, and a recliner that didn't creak. He hired a full-time nurse named Linda, who called me sir, and brought me black coffee just the way I liked it. I felt human again. And with every passing day, Aiden came by. Not out of duty, but out of something deeper. Maybe honor. Maybe love. Maybe just because he was Michael's son. But soon, our conversation shifted. From the past to the present. From memories to truth. Tell me about the company, he said one night, as we sat by the fireplace. Tell me what they did. At first, I didn't want to. Too painful. But he was patient. Listening. Asking. And then acting. Quietly. Surgically. It started with a financial audit. Anonymous, thorough, and devastating. Aiden pulled every ledger, every payroll record, every shady real estate deal. Emma's spending had reached 7 figures on vanity projects and influencer retreats. Jake? Worse. He'd leveraged company assets to gamble in high-risk investments and taken personal loans from underground lenders. Aiden traced everything. Then he went dark. What followed was nothing short of surgical warfare. Frozen accounts. Lawsuits filed by concerned shareholders. Whistleblower documents sent to federal agencies. Emma and Jake never even suspected. And I watched from the sidelines as the empire they'd stolen collapsed, brick by brick. Then came the media leaks. Former employees came forward with stories of unpaid wages, toxic work culture, ghost payroll schemes. Warren Build Co. went from being the pride of Texas to a national embarrassment. And my kids? They panicked. They held press conferences, posted carefully curated apologies on social media. But the damage was done. And still, Aiden wasn't finished. He bought what was left of the company under a proxy, changed the name to Warren Legacy, brought back old staff, rehired veterans, reinstated pension plans. And then he brought me back, not as a figurehead, but as something better, as the soul of the place. I attended meetings, sat at the table, spoke, and they listened. Aiden made sure of it. He let me feel seen again, heard, alive. Then, one day, Emma showed up. Tears. Pleas. Regrets. Jake wasn't far behind. He offered to make things right. Claimed he'd been misled. I let them talk. I looked them both in the eyes. And then I stood up and walked out. Aiden was waiting by the door. He didn't have to say a word. He just rested his hand on my shoulder. That was all I needed. It wasn't about payback. Not really. It was about making things right. About reminding the world that honor still meant something. And that legacy wasn't about who inherited the throne, but who protected the foundation it was built on. Aiden's takedown of Emma and Jake had been swift, clean, and quiet. But now it was time for something more visible. Something final. He wanted me to be part of it. Not to gloat, not to mock, but to stand tall again in a world that had once forgotten me. The invitation came on Warren Legacy letterhead, a private shareholders event at the new downtown headquarters. 5 stories of steel, glass, and stone. A building I once dreamed of constructing, now completed under Aiden's leadership. It stood as a monument, not to money, but to memory. Inside, familiar faces greeted me. Old foremen, project managers, clients I hadn't seen in decades. They hugged me. Some even cried. Said things like, "We thought you were gone," and "It's good to have you back, boss." The room was filled with laughter, tears, and a sense of reunion that made my heart ache in the best way. I saw men who had laid bricks beside me 20 years ago, women who'd overseen multi-million-dollar bids in the early days, and younger faces who now knew me only as a name etched in company lore. Aiden stood beside me, as the stage lights rose. And then he introduced me, not as a relic of the past, but as the heart of the future. I said a few words, steady and clear. I thanked the people who built with me, stood by me, and refused to forget me. I didn't mention Emma and Jake. I didn't have to. Everyone in that room knew what had happened. They'd watched it unfold. They'd seen the headlines, the audits, the implosions. What mattered now was that the name Warren Miles still stood for something, and Aiden had ensured it would never fall again. After the event, Aiden took me up to the rooftop terrace. The city shimmered below us in golden twilight. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon and handed me one. "You did good, Uncle," he said quietly. I looked around, at the skyline we helped shape, at the company he'd salvaged from ashes, and felt for the first time in decades like my life had come full circle. But the work wasn't over yet. The final blow came a week later. Aiden arranged for Emma and Jake to receive certified letters disclosing full audit reports, civil suits, and court orders. Their assets froze. Their legal defense scrambling. Their public image shattered beyond repair. Local news stations ran exposés. Former employees came forward with stories of corruption, bullying, and intimidation. There were headlines like "Betrayal in the Boardroom" and "Legacy Lost." Investors backed away. Endorsements collapsed. And just like that, the empires Emma and Jake had tried to build on top of my name turned to dust. And then Aiden did something I'll never forget. He invited them to lunch. They arrived at the restaurant confused, nervous. They didn't know I'd be there. When they saw me seated at the head of the table, their jaws tensed, eyes darting for exits. But Aiden remained calm. He said, "This isn't revenge. This is consequence. You had your chance to build something that honored your family. You chose greed. Now, you'll live with it." They tried to argue. Emma said I had abandoned them emotionally after Mom died. Jake claimed he was trying to modernize the business. But there was no apology, only excuses. They had grown so used to hiding behind image consultants and legal jargon, they'd forgotten how to be real. I watched them try to spin their stories, twist the truth into something palatable. But it didn't work this time. I stood, placed a worn photograph of Michael and me on the table, and said, "You two were born into a legacy built by blood and sweat. But it'll be Aiden who carries it forward." Then I walked out. I didn't look back. Weeks passed. The dust settled. Emma and Jake quietly disappeared from public life. Their assets were liquidated to pay off debts and settlements. Aiden, meanwhile, expanded Warren Legacy's veteran outreach program, opened new branches in struggling communities, and founded a scholarship in Laura's name for young women entering architecture and engineering. He even created a mentorship initiative, pairing young tradespeople with retired builders. The first graduate of the program became a site manager on our latest low-income housing project. I met him. His name was Raphael. He'd been in prison, learned bricklaying while inside. Said the program gave him a second chance. That meant more to me than all the high rises we ever built. The company was no longer just about concrete and steel. It was about people, about redemption, about service. We launched a community center called The Foundation, built right in the neighborhood where I laid my first brick. It offered training programs, legal services for displaced workers, and a clinic run by volunteers. I visited every week, watched children learn to read where I once hammered nails, and sat on the porch out front like I owned the world again. One evening, a young woman stopped me on the way out. She held her daughter's hand, eyes wet. "You saved us," she said, "not just with a building, with hope." And that's when I realized Aiden hadn't just saved me. He'd saved what I stood for, what Michael died for, what Laura believed in. Aiden and I took a trip to England later that year. We visited Amelia. She was older now, soft-spoken, but still sharp. When she saw Aiden, she burst into tears. And when she saw me, she hugged me like time had folded in on itself. In the garden behind her cottage, the three of us talked for hours about Michael, about the years lost, about what came next. Amelia held my hand and whispered, "Thank you for keeping your promise." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat had closed up, but my silence said enough. In the end, it wasn't about empire or revenge. It was about redemption, about choosing the family that chooses you. and about knowing that sometimes legacy skips a generation, only to return stronger than ever. If Michael could see us now, I think he'd be proud. Thanks for watching. If the story meant something to you, consider subscribing. We've got more like this, stories that don't ask for sympathy, just honesty.